Greetings, everyone, and welcome to SpaceWeek Live for Sunday, October 18th, 2020. So, we had a busy week last week, not so much with launches, but other stuff like the International Astronautical Congress, and we've got a big week coming up, so let's get into it. Let's see. So, starting last Sunday, China, okay, so last Space Week I talked about a Chinese launch, the Gaofen 13, that I wasn't sure whether it got off or not because it was right before Space Week. Well, it did launch, so let's go ahead and check that out real quick. Last Monday through Wednesday, there were a whole bunch of meetings and events in relation to the International Astronautical Congress for 2020, which is an annual meeting. I believe this was the 71st or 72nd. I think it was the 71st IAC. And this one was the cyberspace edition because that's the relevant term of this decade, not hearkening back to the 90s at all, but everybody conducted virtual meetings and whatever. So, you know, there were sessions of consisting of discussions between consisting of discussions between the heads of space agencies across the world, various industry partners and agency officials discussing, current missions, past missions, upcoming missions, goals for the future, Artemis, and other things. So the most interesting aspect of last week's IAC events was, and maybe they had announced this beforehand, but all I was expecting was a discussion of Artemis, but what we got was a live signing by, I don't know, like 8 or 9 international agencies of the Artemis Accords, which is actually a new outer space treaty based on the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, which most of us don't know the details of, but I do plan to make a video or two. So getting into that, getting into the nitty-gritty of the Artemis Accords, and it's a short document. It's only like 7 pages of text, but it's a framework like most treaties that doesn't contain a whole lot of specifics, but contains general guidelines and goals. And so I think what I'll do is I will actually, because kind of like the Constitution, there's no better source for information about the Constitution of my country, the United States, than the Constitution itself. There's no better source of information about the Artemis Accords than the Accord document itself. So I think what I'll do is either later today or later this week post a reading, just a verbatim reading of the Accord, so that you can hear what's actually, and it's not excessively legalese or whatever. I mean, it's a formal document, but it's not completely opaque, because it's intended to be to outline our international space agency and industry partner goals for peaceful exploration, into the future or whatever. Their goal isn't to like fill all the nooks and crannies with jargon and be confusing. But let's go ahead and check out the signing, which there's really not much to see, but it was a historic moment, and I thought it was pretty cool that they broadcast it live. So here you go.
partners who are joining us today in the Artemis Accords. Let's sign.
So we've got representatives from Australia, Canada, Italy, Japan, the USA, of course, Jim Bridenstine, Japan, Luxembourg, the UAE, and the UK, who are the founding signatories of the Artemis Accords. And more countries will sign moving forward into the future. This is what happens. There are founding signatories, and then more countries come on in time. So moving on, that same morning, Tuesday it was, Blue Origin finally launched their New Shepard NS-13, wasn't it? Rocket with a number of research payloads. No humans yet. The humans may be coming next year, maybe. But the most interesting payload, perhaps, was the NASA tipping point program. Well, it was a payload involved with the NASA tipping point program. It was a suite of like ground sensing sensors, that will be used on the moon to assist with the automated landing of spacecraft, of lunar landers. And so what they did was, instead of housing the payload in the capsule, which is where the payloads would normally go, the payload was actually, the suite of sensors was actually attached to the outside of the booster itself, not the payload, but the booster, because of course, when New Shepard launches, it launches with the booster and then the payload on top, which is the capsule. I'm sorry, the booster and then the capsule on top, and the capsule detaches and continues to ballistically fly up to, this time it reached about 106 kilometers, which is just past the Kármán line, the internationally recognized boundary of space. And the booster, because it actually detaches quite low in its ascent, it slows down more quickly. Then the booster comes down and lands propulsively. Well, during that descent, NASA's tipping point sensors activated, and they gathered what was hopefully a wealth of data on the sensors, assessment of the ground beneath it. Like, I think they programmed the terrain into the system beforehand. The terrain around West Texas where it was launched from, and I'm sure we'll hear more about tipping point as the Artemis program progresses. So for now, let's check out that New Shepard launch.
There you go. You see the engine gimbaling. Powerful LOX hydrogen BE3 engine. All right, our hearts are racing over here. We're about T-minus 36 seconds. We're going to turn it over to mission control. Godspeed. Have a great flight.
T-minus 20 seconds. T-minus 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Command engine start. 2, 1.
Mission control has confirmed New Shepard has cleared the tower. Check out that shot from our drone. On her way to space. Lunar landing tech on board. Payloads inside.
So, like I said, let's see what altitude it separates at. Oh, MECO separation. What are we looking at here? No.
Speed's decreasing now.
So, Boom, there's the separation, and they're at about 240,000 feet. Let's see. Wolfram, convert 2 to 4 feet to kilometers. For some reason, blue. Yes, and I know they're using imperial units. Everybody complains about that. So, okay, so they, the capsule actually detaches 30 kilometers below apogee, which is the capsule's highest point that it reaches, and actually 34 kilometers below that. So, yeah. So it ascends. So the booster slows down. It comes back down. Let's go ahead and watch the landing.
Significantly as it makes its way down. There we go. You can see the booster's speed is slowing down rapidly here as it gets closer to the pad. If you were down in Texas, you'd hear a sonic boom any second, almost knocks you off your feet. It's so exciting. All right, there go the drag brakes. Here we go. We're getting close. Now we're just waiting for that BE-3 engine to relight. There we go. All right, come on, Shepard, let's go. Wow. Look at that stability.
So stable.
Touch
Oh my God.
down. New Shepard. Here we go.
Okay, that's enough of that narration. So, yep, successful touchdown. They've never had a failed. You know what? I don't even think they've had any RUDs, any explosive incidents with the New Shepard. It's a well-designed rocket. It's a funny-looking one, but yeah. So the BE-3 engine. If you want to go to the Wikipedia page for the, just go to Wikipedia, search for New Shepard, and that page has data on the BE-3 engine. As a matter of fact, I wonder if I, excuse me, I wonder if I included that data, some of that data here. Okay, New Shepard specs. Engines 1 Blue Origin BE-3. Thrust is 490 kilonewtons, or 110,000 foot-pounds. Compare that with Falcon 9's, whatever it is, much more. It's a small rocket. It's only like 59 feet tall. But yeah, it does what it was designed to do, which is good. Let's see. Moving on. There we go. So, on IS Wednesday, Soyuz MS-17 launched with 3 new crew to the ISS, including, let's see, Kathleen Rubens, Kate Rubens, Sergei Ryzhikov, and Sergei Kudzverchkov. I got it right that time. So 2 Sergeys and a Kathleen, or and a Kate. And so they'll be on the station for about 6 months. And this coming week, Chris Cassidy and 2 of the cosmonauts will be coming down, which I'll talk about later. But let's go ahead and watch that launch. It was a perfect launch. And let's check it out. By the way, this is the Russian coverage because they have better quality than the NASA feed. You can't see it. Let me fix that. Trying here. There we go. Holy cow. All right. I need some buttons that actually work. All right, here we go.
Холодные пневмоколодки служат для снабжения газами и заправки 3-й ступени. Соответственно, после их отвода срабатывают датчики и отводится уже мачта. Команда пуск. Компоненты ракетного топлива поступают.
Предварительно. Система управления ракетой в норме.
Двигатели первой и второй ступени работают нормально.
20 секунд, двигатели первой и второй ступени работают устойчиво.
Вас понял, на борту порядок, самочувствие хорошее.
Параметры конструкции ракеты-носителя в норме.
30 секунд, параметры в норме.
Вас понял, на борту порядок, самочувствие хорошее.
Стабилизация изделия устойчивая.
40 секунд, полет нормальный.
На борту порядок.
Давление в камерах двигателей в норме.
50 секунд.
So there we go. Yep, so they launched at what time? They launched at, oh yes, ugh. This was the one that went from 12:45 a.m. my time until about 7:30 a.m. my time. Yeah, that was a rough night, but we got through it. Me and NASA and Roscosmos. So yeah, they launched at 1:45 a.m. and then they docked just 3 hours later, which is there are different lengths of time that it can take to reach the ISS. You know, I mean, if you recall Demo 2 with Bob and Doug a few months ago, it took them 17 hours to get there. Well, partly that was because they wanted to take extra time for the guys to test out the Crew Dragon systems. You know, it's a brand new spacecraft, and a test flight. In addition, they wanted to get in a sleep cycle, and I think that was part of their testing as well. They wanted to evaluate the sleeping on Crew Dragon. But you know, there are 6-hour ascent, you know, windows, and there are I think 4-hour ones and 3-hour ones. The 3-hour one is the shortest, and that's what they were able to accomplish last Wednesday. So they got there, and let's see if we can shortcut our way to the do launch and docking. There we go. I knew it was around there somewhere. Not playing. There we go. So, yep, so they I wish I'd had this queued up before. So what's cool is with the Soyuz approaches, they provide it's almost like an infrared view, a black and white infrared view, I think. But in any case, they provide this approach view, which we don't get to see very often because, well, since the space shuttle era, when we had, you know, their space shuttle fly-arounds where they would take video as they flew around the ISS. Really the only view of the ISS from a distance that we get is from approaching craft like the Soyuz, which have the camera built into their Kurs docking system. The venerable Kurs, which still works all these years later. And then they disembarked, I guess, from the Soyuz onto the space station, and there we go.
6:07 a.m. Central Time. We are observing how you're opening the hatch. And the first chance to...
Oh, they're sped up. My bad. Yeah, so anyway, they got there fine. And there you go. Now, last but not least, today, this very morning, SpaceX launched another set of Starlink satellites. This mission was called V1.0-L13. Now, normally it would have just been called Starlink 13. I don't know if SpaceX has adopted a new nomenclature for their mission designators, or what. But yeah, it's basically Starlink 13. Here we go.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. And liftoff.
Vehicles pitching downrange.
So, it was a successful launch and a successful booster landing on Of Course I Still Love You.
There's a few of our drone ship.
Deploy.
And right.
Boop. And they caught both payload fairings, but then the corner of the net on one of the ships, either Ms. Tree or Ms. Chief, like gave way, and the payload fairing fell back into the ocean, whereupon they fished it out. But they do reuse the fairing halves that take a drink. But they have to do more refurbishment, I guess, because of the exposure to the salt water. And then the deployment itself.
Starlink deploy confirmed. And now you can see on screen these satellites are slowly separating from the second stage. Shortly they will deploy their solar arrays, and over the next few weeks distance themselves from one another.
So the technique they use to do these Starlink deployments, it's really clever. They literally tumble the rocket end on end, basically, end over end, and then they release that retaining bracket that you saw, which allows there's no thrusters or springs or anything involved. They're just spinning the rocket slowly, end over end. And when that bracket is released, the Starlink satellites just sort of fan out like a deck of cards, using their centrifugal force to just kind of distribute them evenly, and it's really quite clever and elegant. But a great design for deploying multiple satellites like that. So that's all the launches from the last week. Now, looking ahead to this week, we have today. Okay, that was the Starlink. Tuesday, October 20th. At 5 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. GMT, we have the OSIRIS-REx spacecraft doing a touch and go, basically it'll be bouncing off the asteroid Bennu. So OSIRIS-REx was launched back in 2016, and then in December, I think it was September 2016. And then in December 2018, it arrived at asteroid Bennu, and it's been orbiting Bennu ever since. Here, let me play some Bennu ambiance. And so Bennu is this basically a jumble of rocks. It's an asteroid, but it's basically just a big pile of rocks in a diamond shape. Because I couldn't tell you the gravitational reason or reasons why it's shaped like a diamond, but the mission has been going on for a few years now, and they are about to conduct a sample gathering operation called a touch and go, or TAG, where they lower the spacecraft to the surface of Bennu and bounce off of it after collecting some material. Woo! Look at it spin. And that sample will be returned to Earth in, I believe, 2023, according to Maria Kutujan's earlier message. So it's very cool, and that'll be on Tuesday. And then basically at the same time as the OSIRIS-REx stream is starting, Rocket Lab stream will also be starting, so I'll have to do some juggling on Tuesday. So at 5:14 p.m. on Tuesday, 5:14 p.m. Eastern Time, 9:14 p.m. GMT, an Electron rocket will launch the In Focus mission with some Earth observation satellites. I think more small sats for Planet Labs. Planet Labs is actually the operator of the second largest satellite constellation in existence, the first largest, of course, being Starlink from SpaceX. Then on Wednesday, October 21st, at 12:36 p.m. Eastern, 4:36 p.m. GMT, SpaceX launches a second Starlink mission in the same week. This is actually the first time that two Starlink missions have been scheduled for the same week. So this morning's launch took off from Kennedy Space Center and from Launch Complex 39A, the famous Apollo launch pad, and which, of course, SpaceX has leased until like years into the future. And then Wednesday's Starlink launch will take off from Cape Canaveral, which is just a few miles away, for Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, which is just a few miles away from Kennedy Space Center, and that's where the Delta IV Heavy, and that's where SpaceX also has a launch pad leased at that facility. And and that one will be Starlink V1.0-L14, so Starlink 14, basically, which is the 15th batch of Starlink satellites. So as of this morning, SpaceX had launched, 775 plus 60, it's going to be 835 Starlink satellites. And as of Wednesday, that number will go up to 895 Starlink satellites. A few of those may have deorbited. I'm not sure what sort of, I'm not sure if a few may be offline, but SpaceX doesn't provide those numbers. But they have a lot of freaking satellites up there. Way bigger, way bigger than any other satellite constellation that has ever existed. On their way to an even much bigger number, 4,200 or 12,000 or 42,000. The ultimate, the final number is yet to be determined, but they have to get regulatory, permission for every step of the way for the different orbits, for the different quantities, et cetera, et cetera. So then later that same day, about 3 hours later, at 3:30 p.m. on Wednesday, October 21st, is the Soyuz MS-16 hatch closure. So let me click here. Oh, hey, it just expands down. That's nice. Chris Cassidy, who is the current ISS commander, Anatoly Ivanishin and Ivan Wagner, both cosmonauts, will be returning to Earth next Wednesday. And so the hatch closure is, the broadcast starts at 3:30 p.m. The hatch closure is about 40 minutes later. And then in a second stream at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 11 p.m. GMT, is the Soyuz MS-16 undocking and deorbit stream, which will last for a while. It'll last for about a little over 4 hours, I guess. So it'll start with the undocking, and then a couple hours later will be the deorbit burn, and then like less than an hour after the deorbit burn, the crew in their Soyuz module will land near Zhezkazgan, Kazakhstan, which is the town to the northeast of Baikonur Cosmodrome. It's like 100 miles away, something like that. But it's the nearest town/city near Baikonur Cosmodrome of any particular size. And then on Friday, October 23rd, at an unspecified time, there may be a launch of the much delayed and much cursed Delta IV Heavy with the NROL-44 mission. I'm not going to go over all of the delays and everything for this. It literally, this will be, so it was, first of all, it was supposed to launch on the 15th, but it was delayed so that they could have additional time to make sure everything was good to go. And so it was rescheduled tentatively for the 23rd. And once I get an exact time, I'll put that on the calendar, which I will link in the chat now. And yes, so this will actually be the 13th attempt to launch NROL-44. It has been delayed due to weather and multiple issues with ground sensors and mechanical issues, and there was a hot fire abort, etc., etc. So hopefully they get it off the ground so that they can move past this, because every delay is sort of a black mark on ULA's reputation, and even if you're not interested in the national security mission of NROL-44, it's still important that launches are successful, because that benefits the space industry as a whole. Whenever there are incidents or scrubs or mechanical issues, it reduces confidence pretty much across the industry, and yeah, it's not beneficial to anyone to have adverse events. So let's see, that is it for this week thus far. Now, as always, schedules may change. There may be scrubs. There may be delays. I have a visitor flying around me, which is why you need to, subscribe, activate notifications, and then you will get, and also monitor the raw space calendar, and you'll get those updates as they come, because as we know, scrubs are sort of more the rule than the exception, and they happen all the time, especially with certain specific missions like NROL-44. So, questions. If you have any, please feel free to ask them in the chat. Make sure to tag my name so that I see it amongst all the other chat. Earlier, I don't even remember who said it earlier, somebody asked if there was a head bump when the Soyuz arrived at the ISS. No, nobody bumped their head this time. He's referring to, who was it, Oleg Kononenko, I think, banged his head pretty badly. Actually, no, it was during during Demo 1 that Oleg bonked his head getting into the Crew Dragon, but then it was Doug Hurley that really bonked his head coming out of the Crew Dragon. Maybe it's the crew. No, it's the whatever. The hatches are not that big, so whether it's Crew Dragon or Soyuz or whatever else, the hatches between the craft are not that large, and it's easy to bonk your head. So yeah, he was rubbing his head and checking for blood, but he ended up fine. Chair Happy asks, with all the Starlinks up there, why doesn't any others hit them? So satellite orbits are very closely tracked and very carefully managed. A lot of satellites, maybe most satellites these days, they have propellant on board, whether it's cold nitrogen, gas, or whatever. They have some sort, or hypergolic propellants, unsymmetrical dimethylhydrazine and nitrogen tetroxide or whatever. They have propellants on board that allow them to not only reorient themselves, maneuver themselves, but also perform evasive maneuvers if need be. All of the Starlink satellites are equipped with that capability. If there is a detected potential collision, they can basically dodge to avoid it, which is not not like swerving on the road. It's a sort of a slow motion procedure, but it can still be done. And yeah, so Evan McGregor is saying that all satellites have RCS so they can move around it, because a lot of satellites aren't even placed in their final orbits by the rocket's upper stage. A lot of satellites are, like, for example, a lot of geostationary satellites are placed into a geostationary transfer orbit by the rocket, and then it's up to the satellite itself to circularize its orbit at the correct geostationary location. But let's see. Evan McGregor is asking, what is the specific impulse of BE3? I don't know, let me see. Wikipedia. I mean, here, let me look it up for you live. New Shepard. Burn time, specific... Okay, let me look up the BE3. So, because Blue Origin is less prolific with their release of information, and they're less, like, in the spotlight than SpaceX, the data is not quite as plentiful for Blue Origin systems as it is for SpaceX or ULA or any of the other big players. So looking at the BE3, here, let me go ahead and switch over so you can see what I see. Thrust, okay, 490 kilonewtons at sea level, 790 kilonewtons in a vacuum. They don't mention the specific impulse, so I do not know. Specific input, nope. It is unknown. I don't know if that's intentional. On the part of maybe Blue Origin doesn't want to release that information. I don't know. But, all right. Chris V says that Starlink V1.0 naming leads him to believe there will now be a Starlink V2.0. But what could that mean? What could it be? And what might they change? Stay tuned and we'll find out. Yeah, so I don't know. I could have been a contender. No, I could have been part of the Starlink program. I applied for a software development position back in 2017 with SpaceX, and this was before I started, like before this channel really even took off. So I wasn't, this channel existing wasn't really even a factor in my application. But there were issues. It was very strange. They kept saying that they had emailed me self-testing materials, and I never received them. They weren't in my junk, they weren't in my spam, they weren't in my trash. I never got anything. Like, on multiple email accounts, there was nothing. And, a number of weeks passed, and I was like, where's the stuff? And they didn't have an answer. So I had to accept a job position locally here in North Carolina. And there's no guarantee that if I had gotten an interview with SpaceX that they would have had any interest in me, but I applied in any case. But I honestly, I don't know if I could handle working for SpaceX. It is fast-paced, and I might find it too stressful. I mean, because my brain needs unwind time, and I'm not sure that SpaceX really allows that kind of thing. But it would be an adventure for sure. And if I were like not, I won't say encumbered, but not obligated with things like, kids as a single dad, then dedicating my life to such a pursuit might be a lot of fun. But Anis Hamid asks, why didn't countries like France or Italy sign the Artemis Accords? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what sort of deliberations normally happen prior to the signing of an international treaty, and I'm not sure what sort of deliberations specifically happened prior to the signing of the Artemis Accords. Luxembourg, I suppose it's good to have Luxembourg in there, but, obviously not a big player in the space scene. So, but just like the Antarctic Treaty and the Outer Space Treaty of 1967 and other treaties, more countries will sign on, so maybe some of the other big players like France and Italy and Germany or whatever, I don't remember if Germany was, I don't have that up anymore, but maybe they wanted more time to review the document, all 7 pages of it. Maybe they, maybe they're still in negotiations or something, I don't know. But maybe they just forgot to set their reminders, who knows. But hopefully, more countries sign on, because again, I'm going to I plan to do a reading of the document later this week, so that we can see exactly what it says and what the general overarching goals are. The basic idea is exploring space for peace, and that's the core sort of message. Avinash Puchalapalli says that my statement that Blue Origin is less prolific with their release of information is the understatement of the day. I appreciate that. I like that phrase. Anyway, all right. Dwight Brady is asking, when do you think the U.S. will allow craft like Crew Dragon to travel to the ISS in a few hours? So, I am a IT guy. I'm a software developer, an IT technician, and by training, I don't know orbital mechanics. I don't know rocket science or rocket engineering, and or even astrophysics or cosmology or whatever. I just like all those topics as a sort of an enthusiast, not a couch potato, an armchair astronaut. So I am not sure what the various ascent profiles that are available from Florida are. Obviously, Baikonur has some really quick ascent profiles. Theoretically, the limitations in how fast you can ascend from a given launch facility, either Baikonur or Florida, is impacted by the facility's latitude, its distance from the equator, the orientation of the ISS relative, and the proximity of the ISS's flyover to the launch site. If it flies directly overhead, then you're going to be able to get to the ISS faster. Whereas if it's off to the side, because the ISS just orbits in the same virtual space, all the time, and the Earth rotates underneath it. So the Earth is constantly, the ISS moves over the Earth, but the Earth is also rotating under the ISS, because the ISS is in vacuum. So as the Earth rotates, the Earth's rotation is not affecting the ISS. It affects it when it's launching because it's in the atmosphere. But once it's out of the atmosphere, it's not. The Earth's rotation doesn't affect it anymore. So there's always a different piece of ground going under the ISS in any given orbit, And so that's why, if you look up the ISS overflight times or the flyover times for your location, they're, here and there and everywhere because, ISS is moving and Earth is moving, everything's moving. So, all right. Mistus Lucaphasis asks, is there anything like expected lifespan of one Starlink satellite? I think they're designed to last 5 years. Yeah, I believe that's their designated lifetime. Now, as with most space missions, yeah, I mean the main limiting factor of the lifetime of a satellite or a probe is its power or its fuel. In the case of power, Starlink has solar cells, so that's no biggie. But in the case of fuel, SpaceX has promised that they will, that all of their Starlink satellites will have the ability to self-deorbit at the end of their life. And in order to do that, they need to have enough fuel. Just like that Falcon 9 booster that was unable to land as intended because it ran out of fuel. I mean, you got to have the fuel to come back down. So, and that applies to any spacecraft that uses consumable fuel, whether it be hypergolic or cold nitrogen gas or whatever. Microsound is saying the EU needs to verify the treaty before they sign it. Ratify the treaty. Again, I'm not a diplomat. I'm not a politician or in any other way, or a lawyer or any other way have any familiarity with treaties. So I don't have any direct knowledge of that process. Evan McGregor, power to the coders. Tech is tech. That's right. Lasers forever. All right. Yeah, Scott Manley has uploaded a lot of vids on a lot of things. He is exceptionally knowledgeable and has an amazing ability to rattle off an encyclopedia of information off the top of his head with no notes while driving upside down and backwards. It is a skill that I aspire to develop in time. But Scott Manley is amazing. Yeah, and he may have a whole team of people helping him research stuff. I don't know, but at least in his delivery, he's able to just regurgitate it like nobody's business. Tim Dodd, everyday astronauts working on a Russian engine video. Tim Dodd loves engines for sure. And yeah, and also, folks, well, yeah. So, everyday astronaut, he does his YouTube and space stuff full time. That's his actual job. So do people like like Felix, What About It, and some other guys. Folks, but like Vintage Space, I don't know. I don't think her channel is her full-time job. I could be mistaken, but in any case, this is a hobby, and I mean, if someday the channel were to become successful enough where I could financially afford to make it my full-time job, then that would be amazing. That would be amazing, and I would be able to produce a whole bunch of content that would hopefully y'all would enjoy. But in the meantime, I got kids, I've got a full-time job, I've got other obligations, and so I do what I can, and have a lot of fun doing it. So, Sam Velasic, hello Sam, is asking, are Starlink satellites designed to be recovered like the first stage of the Falcon 9? No. Starlink satellites, even the second stage of the Falcon 9 isn't recovered. It is because, okay, so Falcon 9, let's look at the profile of a Falcon 9 ascent. You've got the first stage, which is the most famous one, the one that lands. You've got the second stage, and then you've got the payload or payloads. So first stage goes up, detaches. You have your boost back burn, and your deorbit burn, and Falcon 9 first stage re-enters the atmosphere at about 3,500 miles per hour, something like that. I roughly calculated it one time, and then it comes down either to land at the landing pad on the ground, or usually on the drone ship. Either, just read the instructions, or of course I still love you. So it re-enters the atmosphere at about 3,500 miles per hour. The second stage continues on to an orbital an orbital trajectory, and accelerates up to approximately, let's say for low Earth orbit, approximately 17,000 miles per hour. Multiple times faster than the first stage re-enters the atmosphere at. And so when the second stage comes back down, they do perform a deorbit burn on the second stage, but when it comes back down into the atmosphere, it's going way too fast for any hope of recovery. And it's not designed, I mean, Starship will be designed to survive re-entry, with its architecture, its aerodynamics, et cetera, it will be designed to withstand the heat of re-entry. The Falcon 9 second stage is not. So it just burns up, and whatever, melted chunks of it are left just fall into the ocean, because, they launch out way over the ocean. Similarly, Starlink or any other satellite, basically any satellite that isn't a capsule that's specifically designed to survive re-entry, ain't going to survive re-entry. Even the space station Mir, which was a huge, not nearly as big as the ISS, but it was, prior to ISS, was the largest thing in Earth orbit. When they deorbited it back in like 2001, I watched live, and they had views from like Pacific Islands, which had a view of the Soyuz coming down. It broke apart and burned up, and there were pieces of it that ended up in the ocean, but much of it was burned away in the descent, because of the thousands of degrees of I think it's about 3,500 degrees or something like that plasma shroud that's generated around the objects as they descend back through the atmosphere. Yeah, Snow Kittens was mentioning Scott Manley's dilemma of wanting help, but being afraid that they won't have the same vision as him. That's always a danger when you're a one-man sort of show, one-person show, I should say. Chris V is asking, will SpaceX ever make the second stages recoverable? I don't think so. They could have pursued that, except they, after Falcon Heavy, they directed their development efforts wholly at Starship. And so they're putting their eggs in the Starship basket, because Starship is going to be fully reusable. And, Starship is actually the upper stage, and the first stage will be Super Heavy, which we don't even, like, Super Heavy is not even really in development yet. Although I think they may actually have some of the rings of Super Heavy being put together, but I don't have the latest information on that. For the latest information on Starship development, the best source I'm aware of is the folks at Lab Padre, because they're watching the site all the time with their 24/7 live stream, and they have information from industry insiders and stuff that I wouldn't be aware of. But and they're a partner channel. We do cross advertising for each other as we can. Let's see. So, short version, if not for Starship, then SpaceX may have developed a reusable second stage, but yeah, they're always looking forward. Scanning for more questions. See a lot of banter about deorbit burns and Everyday Astronaut and Scott Manley videos. You know, it's cool that people are so excited about space these days. And they have a lot of very passionate content creators who, you know, who go out there and research and provide information to folks, because if you only turn to the primary sources, let's say SpaceX and ULA and NASA themselves, you know, you're not going to get, like, there's no dialogue there. That's a one-way information feed. Whereas with these content creators, there's actually a back and forth, you know, sort of conversation between the viewers and the creators, which is really great. Still looking for questions. I'm sorry. So Avinash Puchalapalli just mentioned that the Epstein drive from The Expanse, but when I read that, the phrase that just popped into my head, and I'm sorry, was Epstein drive didn't kill himself. But there we go. I don't know if that's a dad joke or what. That's a meme joke. Something. So Evan McGregor is pursuing rocketry on his own, and he's posted some stuff on our Discord, which I will now link in the chat. Discord's a great place for sort of more involved conversations, and that it's not subject to the same sort of stringent rules that the live chats are on YouTube, which me and the mods endeavor to keep the YouTube chats very clean, family friendly, and on topic. But on Discord, you can let loose a little more and actually have a, you know, a knockdown, drag out if you want. Just be respectful of people. Atarusho, where do Soyuz capsules touch down? They land back in Kazakhstan. So the Soyuz MS-16 capsule with Chris, not Chris Evans, with Chris Cassidy and the two cosmonauts that's going to land near Zhezkazgan, Kazakhstan. And if you look up Zhezkazgan, it's spelled like 2 or 3 or more different ways. The name of the city was changed some years back. It basically has the same pronunciation, but I think they spell it with a J now, but it's like Zhezkazgan. And it's about 100 miles from the launch site at Baikonur. Dwight Brady asks if the visors and black paint on particular Starlink sats, do I think the older ones would be deorbited and replaced? So if newer Starlink sats have reflection mitigating properties like black paint or visors or whatever that help them to not be so glaringly bright in our night sky, thus interfering with with astronomy and astrophotography, would the earlier versions be decommissioned? I mean, they're only slated to last for 5 years anyway. So there's sort of a, I guess you could say, a sliding window of satellites where, you know, the old ones that are ready to be decommissioned will be deorbited. Newer ones will sort of constantly be being launched. And SpaceX has demonstrated they can maintain a very high pace of production of these Starlink satellites. I mean, it's really amazing. You know, I mean, they launched 60 this morning. They're launching 60 more on Wednesday. So, yeah, so whatever reflection mitigating technologies they're using, I don't think that the old ones will be decommissioned early just because of that. I think they'll live out their natural lifespan and then be deorbited at the end of their usefulness. Avinash, thank you. I try to pronounce people's names correctly, and because that's important. It is a sign of respect for the viewers and just for people in general to try to pronounce their names correctly. As a matter of fact, National Public Radio here in the U.S., if you call in, you know, one of their requests is that you tell them how to correctly pronounce your name because they want to get it right. It's just sort of a sign of mutual respect that you know, I don't like to butcher people's names because it's you know, it's insensitive. Even if they're difficult, like Kudsverchkov. Skvertsov. Oh God, I got it wrong again. Let's see. Raw Space 2020, not going to happen. Although I'm not going to get into that. If you're in the United States, vote. Darn it. Vote and make your voice heard. That's the only way that our elected leaders are accurately representative of the people's interest, is if we actually get out there and vote. Okay. So, Vermeulen, Chris Vermeulen, I presume that's correct. Please let me know if it is or is not. All right, so that looks like the end of the useful questions. I'll go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you so much for coming. This was an unscripted Space Week, so all I had was my lists of events and stuff, and I think I'm getting better. I am not, you know, naturally adept at sort of speaking off the cuff in a coherent manner, but I think I'm getting better, so that's good. And the less scripting I have to do, the more time I can spend on other things like, I don't know, sleeping or researching information or whatever. So so that's a good thing. And then one day maybe I'll be just like Scott Manley and be able to rattle off 15 minutes of detailed information without a script. But we shall see. All right, so do take care, everybody. Thank you all for coming, and keep it raw, and I will see you in the next stream. Until then, bye-bye.